Hello, everybody. We are here today on the podcast Happy at Work. My name is Tatiana Koval, and we will discuss the people-centric organization, people-centric approach for working with our employees, with international best experts. And today we see the Ernst Schipper, one of the best experts in employer brand management, employer branding. And today we will discuss with Ernst a lot of questions about employer brand management, especially with focus on globalization and customization, localization, employee value proposition. Hi, Ernst.
Hi there. Nice to be here.
Me too. I'm nice to see you there. I want to ask you firstly to talk a little bit about you. Could you share your professional way in the HR area? I think it helps our audience to understand better you, and I hope to follow you after our podcast.
That would be great. That would be great. So my name is Ernst. I'm located in Amsterdam in the Netherlands, and I specialize in employer branding and company culture projects. So basically what I do, I always keep the focus on people and try to bring real life stories to the world so that we go to look at jobs beyond just a job, but as a place where you want to be. Been working internationally for quite a few years now. Basically, I've done projects in all different regions all over the world. I think almost at this time, be it projects over there or like as part of a bigger global project that I did. And we often came across, okay, how do you localize strategy? And that's one of the things that I like doing most, is making it relevant for every employee and for every potential employee.
That's great. And my first question is about global companies. Maybe that companies works not in 3, 4, 5 countries, or maybe worldwide. What is
Mhm.
firstly important for this company when it decided to work with her employer brand and build
Yeah,
AVP and also employer brand management system? What is your
yeah.
first advice to these type of companies?
Yeah, I think the first advice that I want to give is to avoid the biggest mistake that you can make, and that you start with creating content. The idea, what typically happens with lots of my clients as well, is they come up to me and they say, can you make me a nice video? Can you make me this? Can you rebuild our website? Which is really important to do. But the first thing is always look inside and look who you are as an organization, what you stand for, what you think is important, and only then start doing all the other things. So the biggest advice is one step back, go talk to as many employees as you can in all different countries, and just listen what they tell you.
Mhm. I want to ask you about a very important question. We have one country with a headquarter, and we
Mhm.
have, for example, a lot of countries there. We also have our offices. What is the best balance for us when we make a global EVP? How we should make a research for the global EVP and how we should provide the research for understanding what is the best way for localization? What is the balance between
Yeah,
global EVP and consistency on the global level and the customization for deciding particular needs in a particular country?
yeah, that's a really good question, because what you want to achieve is to be relevant in every country. Especially with global companies, there's a tendency, oh, we have a headquarters, this is where we make our EVP and we're going to give it to all the other countries. And then every country feels like, but this is not us. So the biggest thing that you should do, I'm a firm believer in having one EVP, because if you're going to localize the EVP to different countries, it will be unrecognizable in the end, and you end up like being a schizophrenic company with all different kind of companies within it. So what I often do is treat it as a true global project, involve employees from all different countries, ask them questions. Why do you work here? What do you like here? Don't just talk to the employees, but also with management. Learn, okay, what's the aspiration of your country? Where do you want to go? Where are your strengths locally? And basically what you want to do, you want to incorporate this all in this global EVP, and then help the different countries localize it, because in the end, it needs to be locally relevant. But the strategy, just like with the business strategy, is typically there's one business strategy with local adaptations, but there's no separate business strategies, because in the end it's one company, there's one goal, but you try to take into account the strengths from all the different areas. So this is what you do. What I do see is that the initiative for employee value propositions, for example, is most of the time taken at the global level. So at some point, the global countries decides, okay, we see that we want to bring in more people that match who we are, and we want to become an employer of choice. And then they start, and then you need to incorporate all the other countries. The pitfall that I often see is that global starts and only starts reaching out to the countries once they're done. And what I believe what you should do is introduce the concept really early on and try to work together with the local countries. Even though that maybe the head office will make the final decision, it's still important that the local countries feel heard, because that's a bigger acceptance rate for whatever you will do later on.
One more question, a step back before we make an EVP. We have a strategy, absolutely agree with you, a global strategy and local strategy for the company, And also we could have different goals for employer brand in a particular country. It could be, depends on the labor market situation, or maybe in one particular country we have an IT hub, so we need a lot of IT specialists. It's really hard to decide. In any other country, we have our call center and a lot of employees with this type. What is the best way to set goals for the projects and make a balance in global goals, goals for the country, and how to manage this process? I think it's also connected to the EVP.
You're totally right. That's really important to balance these different elements, because in the end, needs can be different, countries can be different. And that's why this strategy is, again, and like how I started, is you tend to start with the content that you want to make, but you need to postpone that a little bit more, because you might want to recruit IT people in one country and call center people in another country, but you still need to know what exactly are we offering these people. So there's always that step back. So we have developed our global EVP, we have validated. I can maybe later on explain a little bit more how you can run a project like that. But for now, for the sake for this question, we have this global EVP, and we now need to start running campaigns, employer brand campaigns, to bring in more people. So what you do, you look at your EVP, and a good EVP is balanced, and you look at the elements of the EVP that's most relevant for those different groups. So let's assume that you've built your EVP on technology, on innovation, and on warmthness of your organization. Well, innovation is more important to the IT group. So what you will be doing, you start collecting the stories about innovation in that area. And that's how you're going to localize. So you're not going to localize the strategy, because that doesn't work. But what you want to do is use that global strategy and make it local by including local employees, and ask them questions about, okay, why are we so innovative? What's so interesting about working here? And not just have people explain their job, but the reason why they want to, why this job is interesting. Because that's another pitfall that's really closely related to all of this, is that once we are recruiting for certain roles, that we want to explain the role to as many people as we can. But most of the time, you are recruiting people who already have this job. So if you're an IT person, you know what you're doing. So you don't need to explain what the job is like, unless it's totally different, obviously. You want to know why you should leave your current job and join this company. And that's where your EVP comes in, because there's the promise and the reasons why you should join an organization. So this is how I do that localization, because you can make it really relevant, because you have this strategy. That strategy gives you direction. It will also give you, like, this is what we stand for as an organization. And you can localize it by asking specific questions on what's relevant for that country or for that specific role that you are recruiting for.
My next question is have strong connection with a culture, a two type of culture, a company's culture, because as I see, then a company has a strong culture. It helps you to handle and work in the different markets in one way. So you feel yourself as a part of the organization. But from our side, we understand there could be a difference between the culture of a different country. For example, in the MENA region, there are a lot of Muslims, so we understand what's one cultural approach. If we talk about Latam, Europe, USA, and any other countries, there could be a cultural difference. What is the best balance between local culture, company's culture, and how to take it into account during the research? Because I'm absolutely sure that you could ask one particular questions, but the answers could be different. And how for you as a manager, with your particular background, to better understand what does it mean in the particular country?
Yeah, it's a really good one, because this is something that you often get wrong, and this is where you really need to turn it around again. So where you have your global strategy, you localize in the country, and if you're running an employer brand campaign in a Muslim country, for example, you need to be locally relevant. So that means that people who see this campaign need to see themselves in a way. So they need to see people who look like them and who share like beliefs that they do. But at the same time, we want it to be in line with who we are as an organization. But if you've done your project right, if you've asked all the right questions and you really zoomed into who you are as an organization, you will be able to ask the same questions in different countries and get different answers. But that's not a problem, because in the end, we use the content for the one country, we don't use that content in the other country. So you will, for example, if you look at, I think work-life balance is a good topic for this, to show the differences. If you would look at work-life balance in, for example, the United States of America, it's really important over there that you're available to your employer. So when the employer needs you, you need to be there. Whereas in the Netherlands or in Europe, it's way more acceptable to not be reachable by your employer. So if one of the promises in your EVP is that you offer good work-life balance, that will look different in Europe than it will look different in the US. But in the end, you still want to be known in the US as the organization that offers good work-life balance. Only it will be different. I always make the joke, like, and obviously this is a joke, is that, well, it's a joke that once one of my American colleagues made with me. He said the only difference when you call me when it's an office day or a holiday is that I have a beer in my hand when you call me when it's a holiday. Whereas he always jokingly said the other way around. When it's after 5, I cannot reach any one of you anymore. And this is an example of what like the balance of work-life balance can be. So you can still say like, oh, I can take off. You can show those differences, but you make them a little bit more tangible in a different way. So this is how you can balance it. So you don't have to, with a global EVP, it doesn't mean that everybody needs exactly the same. No, you want to stand out in all those markets with the elements of the EVP that you defined. So if that's more innovation, or you have a better work-life balance, or you learn more, it can be different between different countries, what they understand or what they see is a good work-life balance, for example.
If you're a global head of employer brand of the company, what is your advice to this person? With whom they should connect it in the local, in every particular country? And what is the best way to communicate, how to have build a partnership which helps you to achieve your goals?
Yeah, it's a good question, and it really depends on the specific organization that you work with. So I work ideally with 2 sets. I like to work with local management, and I like to work with the person that will be locally responsible for employer branding. And it can be someone on marketing, on communications, on HR. It really depends how it works in each country. But I try to get a connection with the highest level in the organization, because that way we can discuss the need why we do this and the bigger picture of everything. But at the same time, we also want to make sure that once we have this global EVP, that it gets activated locally as well. And that's where I need to have the hands on the ground, the people who will actually start working on creating the content that I mentioned earlier.
Before we start to discuss the content and its localization, I want to ask you about visual concept. Sometimes the company could create one visual concept and distribute it for all the countries, but as we discussed earlier, that would not be suitable for some particular countries. For example, you could see the only European style people there, and in China, in Indonesia, the people don't understand what is this company about. What is your recommendation, the first approach to visualization? What is the best way to, you have your EVP and you decided to make visualization for this, what is the best way to do it?
Yeah, I am a strong believer in creating local content because like you said, it's really hard to connect with an image that doesn't look like you. So, and especially because there's countries around the world that are more, where people look more the same. And there's country where there's lots of diversity within the country, but even then, people see whether or not the person in the video or in the photo is from where they're from, and if it looks totally different than who they are, they don't, like you said, they don't get it. So what I always say is you need to have local photo shoots, and they don't have to be maybe really big, because you can imagine that you maybe want to create like a basic line of photos that everyone can use, where you try to add as many diverse people in as you can, but at the same time you also want all the countries to invest in actually getting that local photo shoot, because it will help you tremendously in getting more out of everything that you do. Because in the end, that's what we're trying to do with employer branding anyway, is that we're trying to build connections between our organization and the people that we want to attract. So if in the first time nobody looks like you, it will feel like, oh, does this company even have a presence here, or am I the only one working from this location? So that's something that you see. You can also play with this the other way around. So if you're a remote working company that only does remote, it can be really nice to not do this, because you can say, yeah, there is no office, there is just us all working together. But that's something that you need to really look into, and that's a pretty clear exception. But as a rule, I would always go for make sure that everything you do locally looks local as well.
One more question also about, not if you talk about people for our content, but sometimes I remember one of the mistake of one of the biggest pharmaceutical company, which create the good conception, but its conception doesn't work in particular country, because nobody's look at this conception, they don't understand what does it mean, because this case wasn't closer to them. And also another type, for example, we see the situation and company comes with particular colors, but in this particular country, this colors means not about so joyful. It was, we understand that it's in different countries, you could see the different meaning for some particular colors at least. What could you recommend? For example, the method to manager, if you create, maybe they need to make a focus groups, maybe we could attract the local managers for discussion, for avoid this misunderstanding in the future when you start to build your EVP.
Yeah, it's this is what I see all the time, and it's really hard because you only know what you know, so you don't know what you don't know. So as an employer brand manager, and especially if you're working with an EVP, you need to be constantly aware that you don't know a whole lot of things. So what I do in every project, I said I always start with interviewing employees and leaders in all different countries. But what I also do is that with first versions of my EVP, so this is not ready yet, I do reviews with employees as well. So what I do, I present and I ask them, do you feel that this is who we are? But more importantly, I also ask them, am I using any words, colors, or anything else that's taboo in your country? Is there anything that I'm using in words or anything visually that doesn't work for your company because of cultural differences or whatsoever? Because that's what you need to flush out. Because I don't know. I don't know if a specific color or specific words has a really negative connotation in a specific country. So I need to ask, and that's something that you need to be aware of as an employer brand manager is that if you're good, you need to run your projects and make yourself uncomfortable. So you need to build an EVP that you're really proud of and that you really believe in, but at the same time, put your ego aside and let non-experts decide on if it's good or if it's good enough. And that's why you sometimes need to change things because the words just don't have the same meaning in a different country, or that concept that you came up with people don't understand in a specific country. So that's because that's what we want to do. Everything that's global needs to be aligned locally, whereas you're turning it into content, it needs to be truly local.
Wow. I want to discuss the localization of the content and the balance between global content. This is something what is important for the whole company, what is important to share in all countries that the company has her own offices, for example. And what is the percentage of the local content that could be relevant for this particular country, for the particular offices? And what is the best way also to share? For example, we have our office in India, and we understand that it's really important to know about this office, about the achievements on the global level. What is the best way to work with content, to share content, to grab this content to the headquarters? What is your approach?
Yeah, you want to create something that's bigger and that's for all. So you have your global EVP, and that's one EVP for everyone. But you sometimes also want to translate it into like a little brand video that's showing your employer brand on that global level. And this is where I, like in the previous questions, I said like, okay, you need to align with local leadership and with the people who execute. The moment you start rolling out globally, you connect directly with leadership in the countries, and you're going to tell them, okay, we have this global EVP, you can localize it, but part of the global EVP is also this product, because this shows that we are one company. And the next step will be to localize, and you will get that room, but we also need to make sure that we're all on the same page. So this is how I typically would do it. So, and that also says a lot about that. I don't want to create a lot of global content. I want to create concepts and guidelines. So to share with countries, okay, if you're going to run an employer brand campaign, this is how we typically run them. So I want to assist them instead of just giving them, you do this, you do that. And also make sure that if countries are not able to do it, that's the moment where I need to step in as an employer brand manager and start activating myself. So typically I would travel there and help them set up shop. So I will help them and teach them everything I know about employer branding so that they can do it themselves afterwards. But in the end, you want to make sure that all different countries feel that they own the employer brand themselves. Even though that the strategy is global, you want them to feel like, okay, locally, we really need to make things work here.
You mentioned guidelines. What could you recommend to include in these guidelines? What is the most important thing for these guidelines from your practice?
I think the most important part of the guidelines is like setting the sandbox. It's explaining the EVP, not just the beautiful words, but also how to localize it, how to work with it, but also define the freedom that you will give. Because otherwise nothing will happen. You want to make sure, okay, this is what we agreed on together. This is our EVP. So you really need to do it like this. But in the end, this is where you can make it relevant locally and change it a little bit differently. If you're also developing like a visual concept that you want to use in different countries, you also need to explain that concept, how you came to that concept, how you could localize it again, how you can work with it. Because this is what sometimes lacks a little bit more, is that the people that create a strategy, that they don't really bother to teach the strategy to people who are working with it. Whereas we use the strategy to make sure that we can create winning content, but we still need to enable everybody to understand what we're doing. And this is why we do those review cycles, so that everybody understands what we're doing. So there's the efforts as an employer branding manager that you need to take. Like you get it, but you've worked with it a lot of times, and now people who have never worked with an EVP need to start activating it. So it's up to you to teach everyone what to do and what not to do, because that will make your own life easier in the long run as well.
Absolutely agree with you. I become a trainer. Then the first time I make a big projects on the EVP, I understand what is my knowledge is not enough, because all the people, a lot of people will work. I have 100 persons who are responsible for this in a big corporation, and I need to teach everyone. And that we need to become a team. What is the best way for teaching, for supervising? What maybe they need some special spaces for communication. What is your advice? How to organize it? Because sometimes this person in local countries, maybe this is person who is responsible only for employer brand, but usually this is a person responsible maybe for recruitment and also for employer brand, for communication and also for employer brand. What is your recommendation? How to manage the system the best way?
Yeah, I typically start with defining an ambition per country. So what we do, I'm meeting up with the different countries, and I'm trying to understand what they can do, where they are they really well known in their country already? Is there an entire team on employer branding, or is there someone who does that as a side job? What kind of budget do we have locally? And based on all that information, I'm going to set like the bottom line of what we want to achieve at least. So sometimes I define different levels. So I'm going to say you're an employer brand level number 3. So you just do basic presence. You don't recruit a lot of people. You don't have a lot of time to spend. And not a lot of money to spend. Okay, what we're going to do in your country is we're going to optimize job descriptions. We're going to create basic banners, and we're going to give your career page a basic brush up. So we're going to make it slightly more beautiful. In a country that's really ambitious in the sense they need to grow a lot, they have really hard to reach target groups, they have a dedicated employer brand person, and they have more budget, then we're going to step up the game. So then I'm going to hire the ambition a little bit more. I'm going to say, okay, what I'm expecting is for you to run 3 campaigns this year, and I want you to achieve this and this and this. And then we're going to set the goals from that, because that way we can start discussing on what we want to do instead of just talking about how hard it is to do stuff. I'm a firm believer in that employer branding is 90% work and 10% thinking, because in the end it's a lonely job. What I typically see in lots of my projects, I'm the only one employer brand person in the entire world. So it's not just about how well you can write strategy, it's also how well do you get your strategy accepted into, and are you able to turn them into tactics. And that's how I want to do, because then you can also hold all different countries accountable, because you agree upfront, okay, this is what you will be doing in this amount of time. And if they cannot do it, then they can come back to me and I can help them. But in the end, it's for them, it's their ambition. And this is something that should be doable for that country.
May I ask you to discuss? Sometimes we could find very interesting cases in one particular country, and we understand that it's better to share with all of our network inside the company. And what is the best way to do this? And also the second question is close to this. For example, one particular, in different countries, we have a different communication channels, or a different level of expertise in some particular channels. For example, in one country, we have a person who is really absolutely brilliant in LinkedIn, but it doesn't know Instagram. In another country, for example, we have another situation. What is the best way to understand the local specific of communication channels, to share experience, to help people teach each other? Do you have any cases this way?
Yeah, I have, because what's really interesting, if you take that approach that I just described, you have like different employer branding responsible people in different countries. And what you will see, like everybody will do what they're good at. So they will be successful. And what I want to do is bring those people together and those best practices and try to learn from each other. because the person who's like really an expert in LinkedIn and runs really great things, he can teach the one who's really good at Instagram to do more things on LinkedIn. The one who's really good with Instagram can go back to the first one and teach about Instagram and make him or her do those things better. But then it's really important, and that's a really vital part that we sometimes forget when you're activating your employer brand. This can only happen if you write good briefs. And another thing that often happens is that people come to my desk and they want a video, and I'm asking, what should it be about? And then they tell me some things. What do you want to achieve? And they don't know. So the other thing that I'm always introducing and all clients I'm working with is that we only do projects that start with a brief. In the brief, you will write down, this is what we want to achieve. This is the target group that we want to reach. This is how we want to reach them. This is the budget that we have. This is the ambition that we have. This is the time we can spend. Because if you do this and you are successful, you can share this brief with others. Because in the end, I've made lots and lots of videos in my professional life so far, and I can share them all with you, but you can learn nothing about them because you don't know how I achieved those videos. You haven't seen my brief. So that's the structure that you need to build, is that we not just create content. No, we create content to achieve things. So we need to think before we invite the photographer or the videographer or whatever we do, because otherwise we can never scale it. We can never share it with another country.
One question about cascading your EVP. For example, you have a person who is responsible for employer brand. That's okay. They will work with you. But usually when you work as a local employer brand manager, you also need help from your local top management, from your local line managers, from your marketing, for example, or vice versa, HR. What is your recommendation how to build the cascading system for what all the manager know about our EVP and we can support your work in the local what is the best way to do this? Some ideas?
Like by design, like if you are developing your EVP, you're already like trying to get as many employees in as you can. Those people already know a thing or two about employer brands. So the other thing that I do is that during the project, I do regular updates. For example, on the intranet, I will post stuff. Oh, we're working on EVPs and this is on our EVP, and this is what we've gathered so far. But also, once we have our EVP ready, I will often create something that's called a playbook, where we explain everything that we do. And it is from the highest level on how we develop the EVP until the most practical level, how to write a brief. And I train the local employer brand representative on, okay, this is everything that we have to train so that this person can help train all the others that will help him or her. Because that's the only way you can do, because it's really, because what you see a lot of times happening in global company, there's a really small group that's doing the EVP and the launch. And then all of a sudden, a person in a country gets a new job. They need to do employer branding, but they don't know nothing. So they get a PowerPoint and that's it. And with my approach, you already made them participate in the entire product. So they've asked all the questions. They already know a few people. They feel comfortable that they can do things. And that will help a lot in the buy-in for the EVP and that actual things will happen. It's not the easiest way, because that's the downside. But it's well the best. It's the best way for the long run, is that you put in more effort in the beginning stage of your project, so that later on you can do more. It's really closely connected to management consulting, because basically you're not just building the strategy, you're also building the organization who needs to start executing on that strategy.
One more question. Not so many days ago, as I remember, in Amsterdam, you will have Employer Branding Day.
Yeah.
And one of the topic which I could see from my colleagues from worldwide who posted their impressions from this event. We talk what employee advocacy become one of the very important part of employer brand management. I think
Yeah.
this is a great trend. And I want
Hmm.
to ask you, do you think, is it really important to engage your employees for employer brand activations? And what could you recommend if a global company decide to build this program, to build
Hmm.
it in a global way, to localize it for a particular country, or to make localization, make a particular community of employees in one
Hmm.
country, but also to build a international community, because I know what some of the motivation for people to work in a global company, what they are a part of a global company, not
Yeah.
only local. What is your opinion about employee advocacy and how to implement it in
Yeah.
life?
Yeah, it's really important to connect with your employees, because in the end, um, it's kind of funny. Like, we're talking also about always about channels like LinkedIn, Facebook, and Instagram. But in the end, the biggest and most important channel is your own employees. And this also means that when you're looking at employer branding, you're not just doing employer branding to attract new employees. Now, it's also, you also use this to acknowledge to your current employee that they made the right choice. So a good EVP is not only relevant to the people you want to attract, but it's also relevant to the people that you already have. So what I often say to my clients, especially on leadership level, is what do you do to recruit the people that you already employ every day? Because that's how you build advocacy. It's not about getting shiny tools and giving them points to share stuff. No, it's basically the mindset of a company that you recruit your current employees as well. So often what I do is, as a spin-off of my normal projects, is that we take the EVP and that we look at the employee journey and see, okay, how do we deliver on our EVP on the various steps in our employee journey? And then we turn it around. So I don't believe in employee advocacy as a way, okay, we got our employees lined up so that they will share more stuff on LinkedIn. No, I want to fuel the employee pride to keeping on delivering on our EVP so that they have the feel to do it out of themselves. So there's no need for that program. No, we're turning them into ambassadors because we make it a priority to keep delivering on our EVP. And that's a really interesting one. If you look at your EVP and then start looking at your HR policies and processes, are those in line? Because with a lot of companies, the reasons that they use to attract you are not the reasons they are keeping you in or keeping you within the organization. And that's the other part that's really important. That's something that I think will become more important in the upcoming years, is that the EVP is a part of your bigger people philosophy, is that you start looking at your EVP as, okay, we bring them in with a story. How do we deliver on the story when they're actually an employee? And how do we deliver on the story when they decide to leave us again? So, and then you're going to create a full loop. And then the employee advocacy, that's really important, will become more than just a tool or a way to have like that great video shared by your employees.
Mm-hmm. Last two questions for you. It's very
Mm-hmm.
interesting conversation. The first question is, which companies do you recommend to look for inspiration, which you
Mm-hmm.
think really good in global branding?
Yeah.
And maybe you also have a company who inspire you and you look for them and take into account their ideas. What is, could you
Yeah.
share?
I get this question all the time, and I find it really hard to answer, because what I don't see in all the campaigns, in every big cases that are presented, is the thinking behind it. So my answer is always, you are your own best example, because in the end, the example, because you can say, oh, look what Google is doing, but you are not Google. Or look at that company, but you are not them. The only thing, you have to do it with the things that you are like. If you do your EVP right, every company can become an example, because in the end, why you have this EVP is to stand out on your own. And if you're going to do the things that others are going to do, the best result you can get is what they're getting, but you want to do better than them, especially if you're looking at the labor market, how competitive it is. To me, it's really interesting to not look at competitors, but look at, okay, what can we do to bring our story more to the forefront? How can we, because it's not just about a full circle to how we start. It's not just about creating flashy content and great campaigns. No, it's about finding the essence of who you are as an organization and delivering on it to the future employee, but also to your current employee. And that would be, to me, an example. So that's my typical answer to when I get asked to what are like good examples in the market on employer branding.
And the last questions, 3 main tips for the companies who decided to build and implement the EVP on the global and local levels. 3 main things that we should take into account for the whole process of work.
Yeah, biggest tip, involve employees throughout the process of creating the EVP. Making your EVP local by connecting it to local ambition. And finally, never do anything without a brief. I think those are like from a really high strategic level to a really low tactical level would be the 3 tips if I were to give them like right out of sight of my head right now.
Ernst, thank you very much for this conversation. I think that's really insightful for a lot of people. I hope that give inspiration to a lot of employer brand management, international employer brand managers and people who want to work on this level too. And I will happy to share this content in all different channels, also on LinkedIn, that a lot of people will follow you, for at least on LinkedIn. It's my strong recommendation to following you, to follow your content, and also don't worry if they need any questions to ask you. I think you are open for these advices to all people who want to build a great global and local EVPs. Thank you, Ernst. Have a good week. Thank you for your time. Stay in touch. This is a podcast, Happy at Work, and I hope to see you again with us. Bye.
All right. Thank you. Bye-bye.